What happened to Crimea in 2014? Part 3. Evidence of the hybrid occupation. Today we're going to continue our series about the war in Ukraine 2014 and about Russian illegal annexation of Crimea. We're going to talk about a hybrid occupation and I will provide some evidence to that. I'm Alina, this is my political channel Enough. Welcome to my channel. Here we're telling the truth and fighting propaganda. In this particular case, Russian propaganda about what happened in Crimea. As you know from the previous video, a little bit more about hybrid occupation, which meant at the time that a Russian army in Crimea was, along with paramilitaries and Russian Cossacks, were pretending to be Crimean Self-Defense forces. Some of them were pretending, some of them were just an army, which pretend to be not Russian army. So, how Putin fooled the world? His massive astroturfing operation in Crimea, and today we're gonna look at some evidence. I'll try to go ahead and say right away that I'm an expert on the war in Ukraine because I did a lot of research, and if I show only few pieces of several sources, it means that I researched a lot of them. It took years of my life, literally, to research it and find it, and of course I can't show it to you in 10, 15, 20 minutes, half an hour. That is why Russian trolls can go rest. They could go and find those evidence themselves more than I showed you. If I show you one source or another, it means that in one place there is more information, and there is just, when we can find in one place like Vice News a few videos which showing how it actually was. I saw it in many other places in different shots from different people, but I prefer to show you one place where it all in one. Not because this is the only source I have ever seen and all of a sudden decided to trust it, no. And for now, look at this crowd. This is Vice News. This is pro-Russian supporters in Crimea in 2014. And soon we'll see pro-Ukrainian ones. I would like you to look at these people. Look closely. What I want you to do is just, when I will show you a few pieces of video from different sources, like from Vice News, from Radio Liberty, Radio Europe, and look how they dressed. Look at that uniform. Look, they have shields. Where would regular Russian, they supposed to be Ukrainians from Crimea, Ukraine. Where would they get shields from? Where would they get weapons? Where would they get uniforms? These are most likely one of those so-called civilians. Russian army dressed up like civilians, and there would be Cossacks soon enough. We'll see some of them as well. So the all young guys. The crowd is very similar age. Where would you find that many people dressed up in such a manner and with that many equal shields? Regular Soviet people never had weapons besides the hunting rifle like shotgun, and even for that you have to apply and you have to provide the papers, as I said, from psychiatric clinic or from alcoholic clinic that you're not on their lists and this and that, and you have to prove that you're a member of hunting society and so on. Otherwise you wouldn't have it, period. And these people not only have weapons, some of them, they have shields. You can't just go in the store in Russia or Ukraine or anywhere in ex-USSR and buy a shield like that. And it's just impossible. And they all unified and so on. Like, watch them closely. And this is Ukrainians. Look at that. This is crowd with a whole bunch of different people dressed up differently and so on. Different ages, women, men, everybody. So this is what reported Vice News and Simon Ostrovsky.
To be honest, it's not actually that much bigger than the Ukrainian rally we were just at. The crowd's a lot thinner here. It is a lot louder though.
This is very interesting too. Look at that.
То есть вы не для того, чтобы... А тут милиция вроде есть, вон милиционер.
Ну, мы в поддержку. Мы народная дружина были когда-то в Советском Союзе. Люди занимались тем, что помогали милиции с гражданского населения.
This is true, by the way. There was people, дружина it called. The regular people was going patrolling streets sometimes with that red thing on their sleeve and helping police. But this is looks like another Russian provocateur.
Патрулировали улицы, там в случае чего. Ну, здесь следим за порядком.
Yeah, look at this. This is Kazakh. Look at his uniform, backpack, everything. So this guy, most likely one of those Kazakhs who came from Russia. I was talking about it earlier in the previous part of the video.
Да мы приехали в гости, вот вы даете. Вам погулять. Ну конкретно к тебе даже. Приехать здесь посмотреть город.
He came to look at the city. He's a tourist. He doesn't know who he visiting. Said we're visiting you. Maybe you personally. We came to you. To see your city. To just walk around. To have a nice walk.
Убивать будете? Почему не ответите нет?
Да, конечно, нет.
Нет?
Конечно, нет.
Ну хорошо.
Вообще ни одного человека нет.
А что так долго?
Да, это странный вопрос.
So he came from Russia to Crimea, protesting in full gear and with all that other stuff like backpack and everything. That's amazing. And there are more of them. Those Kazakhs, you see their hats. It means they are Kazakhs. And Ostrovsky trying to say that he is trying to join the volunteers to help Russia, and there is a tent over there, and he just signed up, and he trying to find out what kind of instructions they would get, but it didn't work out for him. But look, they all dressed up certain way. They not local, and I know lots of people from Crimea, and many of them were saying, like, not just in Crimea, in Odessa, in Kharkiv and some other places, there were lots of these Russian people came from Russia to pretend that there is some sort of unrest somewhere in Ukraine, in Crimea in particular.
Мне позвонил начальник СБУ по Крыму и сказал о том, что Рифат, у меня есть для тебя сообщение.
Mr. Chubarov said that he got information that there are few people in the crowd who has weapons, but they couldn't know who they are. And they couldn't stop them.
Людей остановить не могли, тем более увезти из этих автоматчиков.
На митинге также были переодеты российские военные, кубанские казаки, подозрительные лица, которые устраивали провокации.
On the meeting was also dressed up as the civilians were Russian troops. Then there were Kazakhs from Kuban. And some suspicious people who was trying to create fights and provocations.
Утверждает прокуратура автономии.
According to the prosecutor office, that's what was happening.
Подозрения вызвали эти личности.
This is Igor Panachovny. He was prosecutor of Autonomic Republic of Crimea.
Потому что появлялись в те моменты, когда события митинга стихали, скажем.
He said they were suspicious because they show up at the times when the meeting become very calm, like nothing was happening. And the calmer it gets, the more of those people kind of show up. Basically, this is what he's trying to say. Like, as soon as the protesters calm down, then they show up, those kind of suspicious people.
Так, для того, чтобы активизировать стычки.
To provoke the fights.
В Керчь из России начинают.
This is 26th of February. In city of Kerch, from Russia, started to arrive Cossacks.
Прибывать кубанские казаки и другие
From
так называемые добровольцы.
And the other ones so-called volunteers.
Они разъезжаются по городам, выдают себе
They are moving to different places in Crimea and pretending to be Crimean people from Ukraine.
Крымчан, поддерживающих Россию. Руководитель переправы вспоминает, что было несколько волн таких пассажиров.
And they trying to pretend that they support in Russia and they're from Crimea. The person who was chief of that transportation, that kind of ferry terminal, he was saying there was several waves of those passengers in uniforms like Cossacks with whips and everything, like dressed up like Cossacks with the hats like I showed you.
Самая большая 26 февраля.
The biggest group came on 26th of February, but it wasn't just one day they were arriving.
Переправлялись организованными группами.
They were moving by organized groups. This is Sergei Khodko. He was a director of Kerch terminal, ferry terminal in Kerch city.
В одежде, но форма, нагайки, там еще что-то.
Some of them were in civilian clothes, but some of them in uniform with whips and dressed up like Cossacks.
У них были все с собой. В течение там 2-3 дней были массово переброшены людские резервы.
So we're outside a Ukrainian military base here in Crimea, but the soldiers over here are Russian. They're from the base in Sevastopol, the Russian naval base.
They're not supposed to be there. They're supposed to be in the base in Sevastopol. They don't have rights to freely move around Crimea.
And they showed up here early this morning, tried to get into the base, but the Ukrainian soldiers here told them that if they did, they would fire back. So there's been quite a tense standoff here for the last few hours, with the Ukrainians behind the gate here and the Russian, seems to be Marines, all along the perimeter of the base.
Yeah, again, look at them. It's a military force. And they were a military force. Yet Putin lied about it.
А извините, вы можете сказать, из какой базы вы, из какой страны? Вы можете ответить на какой-нибудь вопрос? Yeah, they don't want to say anything. They're not wearing any insignia, but it's pretty clear that they're Russian.
Some blogger took videos how Russian military men came to sanatorium in Yalta.
Скажите, а военные российские для чего приехали?
Excuse me, why Russian troops is here? I don't know.
Возле парламента Крыма пророссийский митинг.
Near the Crimean parliament, there is a meeting in support of Russia.
Распространяют фейки о поездах с вооруженными бандеровцами.
And they are spreading out rumors, fake rumors, that there are whole trains full of armed banderovцы or Nazis from Ukraine who coming to kill them. At the same time, I could tell that when Russian Federation entered Crimea, they immediately turned off Ukrainian TV and started connected to Russian TV and started to pump Russian propaganda. And part of it was that Nazis from Ukraine just now coming to kill you, boo. And some people believed them. This woman saying the whole train's full. And the trains are full of weapons, right up to the top, up to the roof of the caboose. And the right sector is kind of like a Nazi ultra-right party of Ukraine, from Ukraine, guarding those trains. Comrades, we need to do something.
Тысячи вооруженных людей без шевронов и каких-либо опознавательных знаков блокируют украинские военные части.
У нас форма такая.
This man is saying it's our, we have such a uniform.
С опознавательным
А в украинские
Without insignia.
или российские?
российский военный.
Are you Ukrainian military man or Russian? He said Russian. This is another proofs from Inform Napalm I wanted to show you before we started to talk about chronology. So this is Russian citizen in the uniform of Ukrainian police in Ukrainian building of Verkhovna Rada of the Parliament of Crimea. This man, Russian paratrooper Alexei Ivanov from 31st Separate Airborne Assault Brigade, disguised as Ukrainian Berkut. That's a riot police. Look at the carpet he's standing on. Look at the hardwood floor. And there is also a link to his information with comments and everything, and asking, what's that uniform? He look like a cop. Well, in Russian, they sometimes calling police garbage. Musor. So, and they say, he's saying it's Ukraine. And this is the same polite little green people. And respond this is the uniform of Berkut. And this is, you can see the parliament of Crimea, the same carpets, the same floor and everything. So this was one of the parts of Russian army who was presenting themselves as civilians, as parts of Ukrainian military or police and stuff like that. It's always Russian citizens, Russian provocation. After what you saw already, I think it started to be more clear for you, the answers for some questions we asked in the beginning of the video. Why did Putin think in 2022 that he could take Kiev in 3 days? Well, obviously because it worked with Crimea. And at some extent it worked with Donbass. Because it worked in Chechnya before that. Because it worked in Georgia when he took the land of Georgia, and it was successful. He wasn't stopped then. His atrocities in Syria, he could get away with it. So he could get away with sending troops to Kazakhstan. He helped Belarusian dictator Lukashenko. And so far, he get away with everything. That is why. And his plan with Crimea, as you can see, was successful. He did get away with it. Even the international community condemned him. And some sanctions were imposed on Russia. We will talk about it a bit later. But he did get away with it. And he thought that FSB probably reported that the same thing will gonna happen in Ukraine in 2022. That is why some experts also from NATO believed in it. We will talk about it a little bit more later, when we're gonna talk about why Ukraine didn't defend itself enough back then.